47C. أهلا وسهلا. Welcome. 47C, decide please.
I'm boarding a flight to Egypt with my partner. We're on our way to Cairo to visit his family. It feels a bit surreal to think I'll be working on this podcast from Egypt. Egypt is the only country that borders Gaza aside from Israel. From where his family home is, Rafah is only a 4-hour drive away.
On behalf of Egypt, the Iran Congo, we wish you a pleasant flight. Thank you.
It's an August afternoon and it's unbearably hot, but Cairo seems to be unfazed and buzzing. Traffic lines are just mere suggestions. But we're still somehow moving. Beads of sweat are running down my eyebrows after just chucking my suitcase into the car. The desert air coming in through the windows feels like a gift, and everything else feels a bit chaotic. But like, in the best way. I do my writing from a spot close to the balcony. We're staying in downtown Cairo, so you can't go 10 seconds without hearing the blare of car horns. It complements the keyboard clanking well, I think. As much as I'm trying to enjoy my time in this megacity, this podcast and the people in it are always on my mind. I've spent months chasing folks, collecting their stories, and going down rabbit holes I never imagined. I've pushed myself further than I thought possible as a journalist and as a producer. There were many moments I wondered if I should even be doing this. Friends and family warned me about the risks that it could come with. They told me that sites like Canary Mission or Honest Reporting Canada could potentially put my face on their website and unleash trolls my way. Maybe I'd miss out on jobs like Amal, or worse, travel opportunities like Nathan. But here's the thing. Almost every single person I spoke to reminded me that this work isn't about me or us. It's about Palestinians and their fight for liberation. And that's where I want to begin this final episode. Hi, I'm Zahra, and this is There's a List, an investigative podcast by Ricochet Media that digs into the organizations surveilling and doxing pro-Palestine activists in Canada. You're listening to the final episode, The Anti-List. But before we get into those lists, I want to share some advice I got from all the people I previously spoke to. There's a whole new cohorts of journalists coming in. These are journalists from minority backgrounds, some people who want to cover complex and much needed news on Palestine, Israel, but they're afraid of being doxxed. Do you have any advice for them?
Approach all of these stories as a journalist. Do your research. Number 2, mainstream newsrooms will have you believe that is the place to be. If you are able to move around to a few different newsrooms within your career, you will see different models of journalism. Don't be afraid to leave one and go to another. So my third piece of advice is this. No matter what organization you are tethered to, remember your voice is independent.
It's like really important for people to protect themselves. Sometimes you have to go on private. Sometimes you have to delete things even to protect yourself if it gets out of control. So I had a principle. I'll just preemptively block all kinds of people. Like basically in the far right, I was blocking all sorts of folks, and I continue to have them blocked so that I could never have that kind of event.
I think it's very important for anybody who is able to expose what Israel has been doing for decades to Palestinians in every way that they can. And I make sure that the way that I do it is to make sure that everything is fact-based and sourced I paid a very high price, $30,000 plus, to gain the knowledge that I have with my university background in this situation. And, I'll be damned if I'm going to keep quiet about it. If an organization like Honest Reporting Canada hasn't come after you and you've been reporting on Gaza, then you haven't been doing your job as a journalist.
Our government is deeply complicit in that genocide, and we have an obligation to stop the crimes of our government. There's no way to do that is risk-free. That's just a sad reality. I've had a lot of people come to me, young professionals, law students, tell me, I really, really want to speak. I've lost count, Zahra, of the number of people who've done this. They've come to me and they said, I really want to speak over Palestine, but I can't because I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job. Well, Palestinian children are losing their lives every day. We all have a duty to act, and there's no risk-free way to fulfill our duty.
I'm new on Canary Mission. I was always very insulted that I didn't get on earlier. So when I got on, it was like, oh, I finally made it. I think it's mostly Muslim and Jewish people on Canary Mission. And I always say some of the best academics that I know are on Canary Mission. Like, they're all great.
I think that Palestine is the mother of all struggles. Like, I think you can explain the entire world through the lens of Palestine and intelligence and beauty and courage. Palestinian resistance is particularly touching to me and particularly beautiful, and I want to help as much as I can.
And then there's Amal. She didn't have advice about strategy or organization tactics, but her ability to find hope and solidarity really warmed my heart.
Now when I see who's on it, and they're big names, there's like professors, activists, like people that I would never imagine for me to share a platform with, I'm like, wow, Mom, I made it. I remember when I was graduating, I was the only person out of the entire graduating class, 300 people? I wore the kufiya. I wore it to my graduation, and I was wearing it on the stage because I'm like, I'm Palestinian. And then this year, I saw pictures on social media of the graduating class, and kid you not, every other person was wearing a kufiya. And I was like, oh my God, I would have loved to graduate at that time.
This podcast has put a spotlight on organizations like Canary Mission that build blacklists to intimidate and silence pro-Palestinian voices. But what happens when someone turns the tables and puts Zionists under the spotlight instead? That's what the activists behind Reverse Canary Mission did. Reverse Canary Mission is a website that documents individuals who support Zionism or the genocide. I'm speaking to one of its members to better understand the organization.
I'm Raya, and I'm with Reverse Canary Mission, and we are basically a grassroots volunteer-based community initiative dedicated to collective liberation and sort of justice for all people.
The project launched in November 2023, right after October 7th. Its founder, who goes by the name Too Mean to Bean, saw disinformation flooding social media and wanted to build a counterweight, a platform to call out the people and organizations amplifying Israeli narratives.
It's finally here. Users can now submit people on the reversecanarymission.org, and you can edit pages as well. And if you guys don't know what the Reverse Canary Mission is, it's a website I made in order to keep track of people who have supported Israel and have supported this current genocide. No one gets off free for supporting war crimes.
A lot of people think we're this widespread organisation, but we really are, I'd say, a dedicated core team of around 5 to 10. And I do want to say this is a community-based initiative, so it really does grow as more people get eyes on it, because we grow from people making submission requests, so anyone can add anyone to the site. It just needs to be moderated and reviewed.
Like Canary Mission, the site is full of names, photos, and affiliations. It also has over 5,000 profiles. But RCM believes what they're doing is different.
Canary Mission is a doxing site, and we don't view ourselves as that in the slightest. We don't share any private information. We simply compile information that these individuals have shared publicly and sort of explain why they're in service of settler colonialism. And the reason behind that is accountability.
That difference matters, because Canary Mission has deep pockets and political backing. RCM doesn't.
And I think one of the driving factors between us and Canary Mission is they have government support, and they have sort of billionaire funders and people who have the money to make their problems disappear, whereas we have to rely on accurate information and accurate storytelling, because if we were to be, for example, brought up with a lawsuit or something like that, it would be very difficult for us to then battle that. And I think it's very important for us to not become them. They're ruining lives purely because they can, and they have the government funding to do so. They have the backing of all of the political spheres. They have the backing of all of these Zionist lobbies. And I think the difference between them and us is we have something we stand on. Like, we're backed by the Palestinian Thawabet, yani the core principles of Palestinian liberations. They're not new ideas that we're promoting. They're the vision Palestinians have carried for like decades of exile, occupation and genocide. And they're the vision that guides every tool built in solidarity.
On RCM's list, you'll find politicians, musicians, celebrities, IDF soldiers, and billionaire philanthropists.
So, for example, one of the individuals on our site is Adam Milstein.
Adam Milstein is the Israeli-American millionaire / former IDF soldier who was named in the Al Jazeera documentary for allegedly funding Canary Mission.
So Adam Milstein, he funds the Israel Project and he's funding the Canary Mission website.
Yeah, which is interesting because it makes it seem as though we're a part of it, but we're not.
So he also funds other Zionist-based projects like the Israel Project, Stand With Us, Israel on Campus Coalition, Camera, and the AMCHA initiative. So that's one sort of individual we have. So it really is a database of just anyone who's laundered Zionist propaganda, Zionist law, like.
Riot says that lately, Reverse Canary Mission has found an unexpected audience.
So one thing that we found really interesting is how Reverse Canary Mission's being used by the younger generation, sort of Gen Z and millennials, in the sort of sense that whenever they're about to watch a movie or something, they'll Google said person's name, Reverse Canary Mission, and be like, oh, Reverse Canary Mission. And you see this in the dialogue in like the social media spaces, where people will be like, girl, she's on Reverse Canary Mission, or have you checked Reverse Canary Mission? It's just recently we've had a lot of sort of K-pop stans swarm to the site to see if their faves are sort of on the site, and it's just this constantly talking about it and holding this moral barometer in a way that's sort of mainstream.
Hey, it's me again. You're listening to There's a List, an investigative podcast from Ricochet Media. Reporting on stories like this is only possible because of listener support. Ricochet is an independent, non-profit newsroom. We don't have corporate support or billionaire backing, which means we can dig into powerful institutions and ask questions others won't. If you value in-depth reporting on how Palestinian voices in Canada are being targeted, and you want to see more independent journalism like this, please consider supporting us. Even a few dollars a month makes a difference. Head to ricochet.media/donate. That's ricochet.media/donate to become a monthly supporter today. Reverse Canary Mission is one way activists are taking on pro-Israel organizations and individuals. But there are more lists, ones that flip the lens entirely. Canadian journalist Davide Mastrasi of The Maple is behind the project called Find IDF Soldiers. The site so far has documented 206 Canadians who've served in the Israeli military. Each profile draws from open records, like news articles and social media, to trace when they joined, what units they served in, and what they've done since. Davide says the list does not dox people, nor does it accuse anyone of a crime. The Foreign Enlistment Act allows Canadian citizens to join armies of countries it's friendly with. This includes the Israeli army. For Davide, this list is about the public's right to know what's already in the public domain. We were unable to get comment from Davide, so I thought I'd share my take on why something like this IDF soldiers list exists. North America holds a pretty solid track record of surveilling pro-Palestine and Muslim communities. You don't have to dig hard to find these stories. But former IDF soldiers are often celebrated in the media. Davide got a lot of his information from mainstream news outlets like City News, the National Post, the CBC, the Canadian Jewish News, and the Jerusalem Post. The IDF list forces that contradiction into the open. But lists of any kind only go so far, whether you're on one or making one. What comes next requires more than documenting names. It requires action. And that's exactly what our next guest believes to his core.
My name is Yipeng Ge. I'm a family doctor and public health practitioner by training. I primarily work on unceded traditional Algonquin Anishinaabe territory, also known as Ottawa, in refugee health, but also I've been working in Indigenous primary healthcare as well in Toronto.
Dr. Ge is a physician, but his work doesn't stop at the clinic. His career has taken him into global movements for justice, into Gaza itself, onto boats of the Freedom Flotilla, to being alongside activists trying to break the blockade at the border between Egypt and Palestine.
I was only able to work in Gaza once in February last year. I've tried to return in May of last year, but that was unsuccessful because of the Rafah invasion and the Israeli military occupying and later destroying the Palestinian side of the Rafah border crossing.
Dr. Ge joined the Global March to Gaza earlier this year, where civilians from around the world walk through Egypt to the Gaza border in hopes of breaking the blockade. Dr. Ge also helped prepare the 37th Freedom Flotilla, a boat in an ongoing series of aid vessels that sail across the Mediterranean with the intention of delivering essential aid to Gaza. And so, when the Public Health Agency of Canada asked him to give a presentation last year, he thought, finally, this is a space where the truth about Gaza could reach people inside the federal system.
Yeah, it was informally sometime in the spring of last year where I was approached by someone that works at the Public Health Agency of Canada who wanted to have a presentation about Palestine, about Gaza, because there was a complete silence and absence of the recognition of attacks on healthcare and the impacts of structural racism in terms of silencing and censorship of the federal service and employees being able to talk about Palestine. We began formal kind of email exchanges sometime around June or July.
From the beginning, there were signs it wouldn't be easy. Organizers warned there would be pushback. They suggested pairing Gaza with Sudan to make the subject more palatable. Dr. Ge agreed, even though it meant diluting the focus.
The organizers of the event knew that there was going to be backlash from the higher uppers, and so they thought it would be more palatable to bring in Sudan as well, to have it be about Gaza and Sudan. And quite honestly, Sudan deserves equal, if not, a lot more attention. But nevertheless, we kind of said, okay, you're the organizers, this is what you want to do.
Even then, his most important slides were stripped away.
There is a slide about calls to action because here you have federal service employees that have the ability to have these discussions in the federal service because their employer, the government of Canada, is the one supporting Israel's genocide in Gaza. I had a slide for calls to action on the Palestinian BDS movement. And the other piece was the arms embargo campaign. That was entirely scrapped. And it was basically support humanitarian efforts, donate. It was very watered down. Even with all that, I was like, okay, fine. Maybe some exposure is better than none.
Then came the day of the presentation. Employees logged on, waiting to hear him speak. And then just minutes before he was supposed to begin, an order came down from the very top of the Public Health Agency of Canada. Cancel everything.
The event. So it was literal minutes before the event was supposed to take place. And the direction came from the president of the Public Health Agency of Canada and the vice president to the organizers to shut the event down. They said that the event might be postponed to the new year. And so it was such a blatant example of anti-Palestinian racism. And it involves some of the highest levels of offices and leadership and authority within the Canadian Public Health Service.
When Dr. G later filed an access to information request, he discovered messages from Jewish employee groups celebrating the cancellation. He said the pressure had come from ministers, political appointees, and even Canada's envoy to combat anti-Semitism. What was too dangerous to allow federal employees to hear? The slides? The ones that called for something more than charity? Dr. G never got to give that presentation, so I asked him to share the calls to action he prepared with me, and in extension, with you.
And I really wanted the calls to action to not just be, oh, speak up, right? Like, of course, it's important to speak up, but like organize for concrete actions that materially help move the dial towards Palestinian liberation, because that is the ultimate solution. That is the ultimate.
His message was simple: don't stop at words, act.
And so the slide was what you can do to help support the Palestinian BDS movement. There's a link to the BDS movement website. Support the Arms Embargo Now campaign, and there's a link to that website as well. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Melanie Joly, said in January and later in September that we're not sending arms.
This is what Joly said in September 2024.
So, first and foremost, our policy has been clear. Since January 8th, we and I have not accepted any form of arms export permits to be sent to Israel.
This summer, a damning report about Canada's continuous flow of weapons to Israel came out. It highlighted how Canada has sent hundreds of shipments of bullets, military equipment, weapon parts, and aircraft components to Israel, well after making repeated claims that it had stopped.
And so it's been a full lie. Canada has continued to send military technology, weapons, arms to Israel up until July of this year.
But most importantly, the doctor shared suggestions on how to organize and take action.
Meet with the store manager to request that they stop selling Israeli goods. With a friend or two, put up posters about BDS in your neighborhood. Talk to a friend or family member about the Palestinian BDS movement or the Arms Embargo Now campaign. Join a local activist group or other BDS Palestinian organization in your community or union. Like, these are very doable things for any person to commit to. I'm not telling everyone to do everything. Pick something and do it with other people so that it becomes like educational, it becomes capacity building, it becomes growing a movement towards something, right?
His strategy isn't about boycotting a single product. It's about collective organization, about ordinary people finding each other and pushing back against governments and corporations that profit from war.
And I know ultimately Palestine will be free within my lifetime because of the actions of Palestinians on the ground who continue to resist in all the ways necessary against Zionist colonial forces. But that does not absolve us of our responsibility for ending the forms of complicity that our government, our companies, the companies in our own backyards, that are responsible for sending those weapons. That is our responsibility to end. So it is in their interest for us to feel helpless and hopeless and that we do not have power. But the people have the power. There's shared responsibility and duty and obligation in bearing witness to genocide that is done in our name, in our taxpayer dollars. I think about that all the time. Like, the more that I work in the clinic, I'm in the clinic today, the more tax money I give to the government that allows the government to do what it's doing in supporting Israel and genociding Palestinians in Gaza. So I think about that all the time.
I think it's just like a very weird feeling also being in Egypt right now and knowing you're just like a few hours away from the border, from Gaza, like, and life continues on this side of the border.
This is like so abnormal for any human to kind of hold in our bodies. Like it is not, and this is not our suffering to experience and to hold. Like we need to, yeah, channel that to the perpetrators of this genocide, to the war criminals that are walking around us.
Ricochet asked the Public Health Agency of Canada why Dr. G's slides were changed, whether the agency was put under pressure by employees or politicians, and whether the event will be rescheduled. A spokesperson from the agency said there were no current plans for another date for this event. We were unable to reach Canada's envoy to combat anti-Semitism, Deborah Lyons, for comment. Before we part ways, there are a few things I'd like to catch you up on. Remember that case we talked about in episode 1, the one where the Trump administration was using Canary Mission to target and deport pro-Palestine students in the US? Well, there's been a big update. A few weeks ago, US federal judge William Young ruled that deportation drive illegal. He said that the Trump administration had misused their power in order to strike fear into similarly situated non-citizen pro-Palestine individuals, proactively and effectively curbing lawful pro-Palestinian speech. He also said that the effect of these targeted deportation proceedings continues unconstitutionally to chill freedom of speech to this day. Although Mahmoud Khalil and Rumaisa Ozturk have been released by ICE, they continue to face deportation proceedings. Last week, world leaders signed a ceasefire and peace framework in Gaza. This included the return of 20 living hostages by Hamas, in exchange for close to 2,000 Palestinians Israel holds prisoner. But amid the joy of family reunification, critics argue that the deal is far from a clean breakthrough. There are no clear guarantees for Palestinians' sustained security, dignity, and rights. There's also worry over there being no enforcement mechanism to hold Israel to its commitments. Trump, in his address to Israel's Knesset, hailed the agreement as the turning point and a new era of peace.
After 2 harrowing years in darkness and captivity, 20 courageous hostages are returning to the glorious embrace of their families, and it is glorious.
But observers noted that his rhetoric largely celebrated Israeli gains and offered minimal acknowledgement of Palestinian suffering.
I want to express my gratitude to a man of exceptional courage and patriotism, whose partnership did so much to make this momentous day possible. You know who I'm talking about. There's only one, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And let me also convey my tremendous appreciation for all of the nations of the Arab and Muslim world that came together to press Hamas to set the hostages free and to send them home. We had a lot of
Some analysts argue that Trump's taking credit for what was achieved through the prolonged pressure on Israel, pressure that came from activists, civil society, and global protests. That brings us to the end of There's a List. The response to the show has been incredible so far. I'll continue to cover this beat as more updates come. In the meantime, you can listen to journalist Adrian Harewood discuss national and international politics over at Ricochet's In Bed with the Elephant podcast. Adrian's had on guests like Francesca Albanese and Dr. Yipeng Ge. Trust me, you're going to want to make it a part of your weekly routine. You can also check out news stories and investigations on politics, climate, and indigenous issues on Ricochet's website at ricochet.media. If you've listened this far, please take a moment to share your thoughts about the show in the comments and give us a rating on Apple, Spotify, or wherever else you're listening. Your support will help more people find this show and us. Thanks for lending me your ear. See you in the comments.
There is a list. This list, in Arabic, this list says we are in an operation. the operation against Israel started in the 7th of October. This is a Guardian list where every terrorist writes his name and every terrorist has his own shift guarding the people that were here.
There's a List is written and produced by me, Zahra Kuzema, and published by Ricochet Media. My editor is Andrea Houston. The executive producer is Ethan Cox. Jawad Al-Bidawi is the technical producer. Sarwa Abdul made the gorgeous cover and episode art. This podcast has been made possible through the generous support of Journalists for Human Rights. A huge thanks to Dr. Yipeng Ge and Reverse Canary Mission for speaking with me. Thank you all for listening.